Chapter 20 is our very first chapter in a new unit, Unit 3, and it's the study of human life. Chapter 20 is going to be our introduction to human anatomy and physiology. According to current evolutionary theory, modern man first appeared in the savannas of Africa about 200,000 years ago, and man had many improvements over his primate ancestors, and one of the things that made him an improvement was his ability to walk upright. He had a larger brain, and he was able to use language. But this is quite in contrast to what the Bible actually says about man. In Psalm 139:14, we read that, "I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knows right well." So where does man fit in our modern classification of living things that we've learned already so far this year? Well, first of all, man belongs to the animal kingdom. He is in the phylum Chordata. That means he has a nerve cord. The subphylum Vertebrata, we have a backbone. Of the class Mammalia, remember mammals, they have hair, they give birth to their young alive, they nurse them, and other features that we associate with mammals. We're in the order primates, so that kind of puts us in the same group as apes and monkeys. We're in the family Hominidae. And then our genus and species names, which is the way we refer to each living thing is through their genus species name, is Homo sapiens. So humans' genus species name is Homo sapien. Now, if man is different than the animals, and that he's made in the image of God, then there's going to be certain things that make him different. Humans are different from animals because God created him in his own image, and being created in God's image doesn't mean that man have a spiritual body, a physical body, I should say, like God. Remember in John 4:24 it says that God is spirit. So we have a spirit, and man is a special creation of God. So what are the characteristics that we as a special creation of God have? We have different types of behavior. Some of these are common to other animals as well, but there are some of these things that we will talk about as types of behavior or kinds of behavior that make man different. First of all, we have some what we would call inborn behavior. These are we have like reflexes and instinctive behavior that are part of that. Instincts are just complex reactions to various stimuli, and the instincts that humans may have are usually kind of overshadowed by the things that we've learned in our intelligent behavior, that the instinct itself usually can't be measured. It's pretty hard. Now, another type of behavior that we have what we call conditioned behavior. This is we've learned from experience quite often, and the major factor in the success of man's learning is the quality of the teaching he has received. You know, how well have you been taught to respond in a certain way. And then we have intelligent behavior. Intelligent behavior is based on the ability to reason, to solve problems, to have insight, to see relationships between objects, to recognize cause and effect, to react to something that does not immediately or personally affect us, uh, to attach value to something that has no actual immediate value, like a dollar bill has no immediate value, but we attach value to it. And then we can also react emotionally. And it is not true, however, that humans are only organisms with intelligence. There are other animals that have intelligence, and so we're not the only ones. And what are some ways that man's intelligence is superior to the animals, though? First, man has reasoning power that's far beyond that of any animal. Some have a great amount of reasoning power, but nothing to the extent that God gave to man. And then second, man has the ability to use highly advanced languages. If you think about the words that we use in math and physics and things like that, that there's nothing in the animal kingdom that compares to that. And then third, animals may sometimes display emotions, but they're never on the same par as human emotions. Our emotions have many facets to it. So that's what makes us very unique. But in addition to these things that all animals can have, but maybe not to the degree that humans have, uh, we have a spiritual nature, a spiritual behavior. In Genesis 1:27, it said that God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. Now, many Christian scholars agree that the image of God includes original knowledge, that God gave to Adam. We still have a degree of that still. Uh, Righteousness, we're unrighteous, but Adam was originally created righteous. Holiness, that we're unholy because when Adam and Eve sinned, all of us have become unholy. So fallen man still has a remnant of the moral nature in his conscience. In other words, even the Bible says that we have this innate ability to sense right and wrong. Uh, and that informs a person's sense of what to do and what not to do. So in the image, God is intelligent, so we have intelligence. We exhibit emotions as God exhibits emotions. He loves, he hates, uh, he longs for, it says, and things like that. Uh, and we have a will. We can choose to do something, just as God has a will. And then, as God is in control of all of creation, God's given us dominion over a portion of His creation here on earth. Now, the one thing to remember is that this the part of man, the spiritual behavior or nature is the part of man that will never die. Even though our body dies and decays, there's part of you that will never die. Once God created you in the womb, that part of you is eternal. And there's a part that is morally accountable to God. You can choose to follow God or you can choose not to follow God, but we are going to be accountable. Whatever choice you make, we will be held accountable for that choice. And there's that fact that that spiritual nature needs to be redeemed. When you are born again or you accept Jesus as your Savior, God gives a new nature. And so this old nature has to be redeemed. He does that by giving us a new nature. Now, let's, as far as humans are concerned, let's start looking a little bit at, on the larger scale, about humans, and then we'll start breaking it down more as we go through. But before we can do that, we need to understand some terms that we often use in our study of humans. We have the word anatomy, and anatomy is how a structure is shaped, where it's found, and where is, this particular, where's your heart found, and what's it's made out of. That would be the anatomy. And then we have another term that we often use that goes right with it, is what's the function of that structure? What's the purpose of the heart? What does it do? So we have anatomy and physiology. In fact, we sometimes offer at the high school level a course in human anatomy and physiology. So let's look at these terms that help us when we describe where something is located, and that we will know what these words mean. There's a lot of words, I'll have to say, and some of these you may already know, and others you will have to learn. Now, how do we define these terms? Well, we're going to define these terms in what we call the anatomical position. That means you're standing upright with your arms at your side, the toes and palms, and your face forward. So imagine your hand has the inside of your hand facing toward the front. So that's what is going to be. All these terms will expect you to be standing like that. So the first pair of terms that we want to talk about is lateral and medial. Lateral means towards the side. If you kind of think of the word in football, you can lateral to a teammate to the side. That means, so lateral means to the side of an imaginary, line that divides the body into halves. And then we have a medial. The medial is closer to the midline. If you kind of think about in math, you have a term that is like the median. That means it's closer to the middle. Then we have another pair of terms is anterior and posterior. Anterior means towards the front. So if you're standing upright, it would be on the stomach side of your body. And then posterior is toward the back, where your backbone is and things like that are located. Another pair of terms that you will see, if you'll notice that all these terms seem to like opposites of each other. Superior means that it's upward or toward the head. So as you're going toward the away from the ground toward the head end. Inferior means that it's downward towards your feet. So this would be like describing where something is located. Superficial versus deep, word that you might know, like that's just a superficial cut or a superficial burn. Superficial means just on or near the surface. And then deep means toward the inside of your body. Then we have proximal versus distal. Proximal is located close to the trunk of the body. That's the main part of your body. And then distal, if you think it's kind of a word like distance, it means away from the trunk. Like your feet are distal to the trunk of your body. They're distant. We also have transverse and sagittal. And transverse is a line that divides the body into the superior and inferior, a line that divides your body to the top and the bottom half of your body. And then sagittal is a line that divides the body into a right and a left. So you could imagine being divided from your head all the way down to your toes, right through the middle of your body. That would be sagittal. That's the line that divides the body in that way. So let's look at some other names that we have associated with the human body. The cranium is the head region of our body. The cervical area is our neck. The brachial area is our arm. The trunk is everything from our shoulders down to where our legs are attached. The thorax is our chest area, the entire area that has ribs. The abdominal area is where your stomach is located, and intestines. And then your hips make up the pelvis. If we turn our individual sideways, we have one more area that we can identify, and that is the lumbar region. That's the area above your hips and below your ribs. Now looking at more of the inside of our body, where our brain is located is our cranial cavity. And then there's a little skinny cavity that goes down the inside of your vertebrae called the spinal cavity. Where your lungs and your heart are located is the thoracic cavity. And it's divided from the abdominal cavity where your stomach and intestines and other organs like that are located. There's a muscle in between there that divides it called the diaphragm. And that takes us to the end of the first section.